Okay, hello and welcome to the Enterprise Excellence Network webinar series. I'm joined today by Bob Emiliani and Professor Peter Hines. Today, Bob will be speaking on Kaizen for improving business and human health. Before we pass over to Peter and Bob, I just wanted to explain a bit about who we are here for those who are not sure on who the Enterprise Excellence Network are. So we are a members-only arena for senior lean leaders based in Europe, which was founded by Professor Peter Hines. And the network commonly includes quarterly benchmark events at best practice and award-winning host sites. And these workshops are held over 2 days, each with topics driven by members and the challenges currently. And the workshops are led by Peter Hines. And these webinar series, we are now, during the current crisis, we are now having these webinar series as a way of just engaging the wider audience as well. So the format of this webinar, we're going to have a 30-minute presentation by Bob and then a Q&A session at the end for about 30 minutes. So you are able to ask questions throughout the webinar if there's something that you're sort of burning to ask. However, those questions, the question time at the end is very much dedicated for those questions for Bob. Okay, so now I'm going to pass over to Professor Peter Hines, who will just explain a bit more about what we're doing and his background too. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Emma. And good afternoon or good morning or good evening, wherever you happen to be listening to us today. As Emma said, you know, we run these webinars probably about every 2 weeks, and Bob's kindly agreed to speak to you today. So I've known Bob for, I don't know, probably getting on for 20 years, I suppose. And
yeah.
And he's come over to the UK a few times, and I've met him over in the US as well. And Bob was one of the first people to start thinking about lean a bit more deeply than we probably all were doing around 2000. And during the 2000s, he spent a lot of time thinking about some of the history of lean, some of how it linked in with other activities like F.W. Taylor, etc., and particularly around the leadership aspects. And more recently, he's been looking at why more companies don't set up lean and be successful, etc. So I think he's going to sort of follow on with that sort of more recent theme in terms of this session around Kaizen and the benefits to the organization and to people's well-being, etc. So on that point, over to you, Bob.
Okay, thank you. Off we go. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I hope you find this webinar interesting and most importantly useful, and that it provides you with some information to act upon and to make changes. So today we'd like to talk about Kaizen and the positive impact it can have for not just business health, but human health as well. So some of you may know me and my background. My degrees are all in engineering, and I spent 15 years in industry prior to joining academia. It was in industry, of course, where I learned about Kaizen from Shingo Kaizen consultants. And so I've been teaching the subject of lean leadership and lean supply chain management and some other courses for about 20 years now. And I have written a bunch of books and a bunch of papers, which is what academics tend to do. So leaders ask me, what should I do with respect to their lean efforts? And my answer is always the one most important thing to do is Kaizen, and in particular, Toyota-style Kaizen, the type of Kaizen that Toyota does. And throughout this presentation, you'll see why that particular type of Kaizen is so important. There's many types of Kaizen out there, but not all of them produce a business result. And so that's why I want to emphasize Toyota-style Kaizen. And ultimately, what you want to try to do in that effort from a technical standpoint is to eliminate queues, connect processes, and make the work flow, but you also want to achieve important things from a human perspective as well. So why Kaizen? It's for business health. Here's a quote from a gentleman who was a vice president of a department store type of company, who was quite an insightful guy, wrote some books and so forth. Oswald Knopf. He said, every organization constantly deteriorates. It is the primary function of management to rebuild at a rate that exceeds these losses. Management can never rest. If it does, the organization deteriorates. It must study new inventions, new devices, and better methods. It must initiate a flow of experiments. And unfortunately, what you see in businesses that are what I refer to as classically managed, I would just call it the old style management practice, there's very little experimentation going on because people are afraid to fail and get blamed for problems and so on. But the most important thing a business can do is to initiate this flow of experiments. You can kind of think about it as, a dike has been breached and water is flowing in and constantly flowing in your business. And that constant inflow of water in a business setting is a constant inflow of waste and confusion and so on. And that you have to do a lot of experiments to help beat that back. So what are some of the indicators of bad business health? Being unaware of problems, blaming people for problems, unclear expectations, conflicts between departments, conflict between the business and its suppliers and customers, untested beliefs and assumptions, slow or bad decision making. These are the type of indicators that the business is in bad health. And an organization can function like this for decades because the truth of this matter, the truth of the situation, the illogical thinking, the delays, and so on are just ignored. And this is how businesses over time get into a lot of trouble. So we want to avoid that because when business gets in trouble, it generates a lot of problems for every stakeholder, customers, suppliers, employees, investors, communities, and so on. So to improve business health, everyone should be engaged in improving all processes every day, and specifically rapid testing ideas. And two types of rapid testing: trial and error for problems that are difficult to understand, and more structured experiments for problems that are easy to understand. And I put a clock there to emphasize the notion of rapid testing ideas, because too often when I visit companies, I see the testing of ideas only occasionally, not on a daily basis, and not rapid testing. You have an idea, let's try it out. When to try it out? Now. Let's try it out now. One of the things we were taught in Kaizen, 25 years ago, was that the sensei would challenge us to come up with an improvement, not 3 days from now, not a week from now. He would say at 9 o'clock in the morning, come up with 5 ideas for improving this by 2 o'clock, and show me how you've implemented them. Show me what you've done. So there's a tremendous focus on time and doing things quickly and cycling through these experiments very quickly. So it's a combination of an engineering mindset and the scientific method. And to be successful at this, we have to start to understand the preconceptions that bog our thinking down, and we must begin to abandon our preconceptions. We also have to get away from the notion that process improvement is only for people in the lower levels of the organization. It is for everybody. So the flow of experiments requires a flow of ideas. People must be allowed to think. They must be able to generate ideas and test ideas. And if we're weighed down by preconceptions, we can't see the truth of the matter. And if we can't see the truth, then we cannot improve. And if we start to eliminate our preconceptions, people are allowed to think. They will try new things. And for that to happen, the managers, of course, must trust and respect the people. And so if you have familiarity with just basically Toyota's way of thinking, you'll understand that the sort of humanistic aspect, that you have to allow people to think and try things in order to make improvements, and you cannot deny the reality of the situation that you're in. I came across this slide some time ago. It's actually simply posted on the internet, but when I saw it, it really shocked me in a positive sense that this sort of gives away the whole story of the Toyota way of thinking. And it's from a training session that Toyota does, and it was in Spanish, of course. It says, what scenario is most identifiable with the Toyota way, A or B? And in the left-hand side, A here, you can see that there is only one answer to this problem. And so the one answer basically suggests that we're rooted in preconceptions that there can only be one answer to a problem. But on the right-hand side, what we have here is a goal or an objective represented by the number 9, which is, for example, how do we improve or how do we achieve material and information flow in a process? And you can see the boxes are blank here, which means there are infinite ways of doing that. And so you have to experiment on a continuous basis. Even when you achieve flow, something is going to go wrong. It'll upset flow. You have to do more experimentation to continue to achieve flow. And to do this, as one of our senseis would tell us, be brave and try it out, because most times in an organization, we're afraid to try things out. We're afraid of the consequences, and management has some control over us, and they frown on these types of experiments and so on. But we have to be brave and try these things out and do these experimentations in a rapid cycle kind of way. This is a tremendously important slide, and it's going to be recurring. You'll see in a moment in this presentation. But B is what needs to occur in organizations. So we think about something like economies of scale. Is that the right way to think, or should we think in terms of flow? And this is the classic curve by George Maxey and Aubrey Silbertson, who I met at the Oxford and Cambridge Club. Maxey died a long time ago. Silbertson passed away recently, unfortunately. But we were talking about his curve here that's from a book that was published many years ago about the automotive industry. And this basically is the one answer. If you want to get lower costs, you have to produce more. But Frank Woolard, who was a production designer, production engineer, production manager at Morris Motors in the UK in the 1920s, he, along with Taiichi Ohno, later on, 20, 30 years later, figured out this idea if you need to experiment to get to the objective of achieving low cost while producing a low volume. And to do that, you have to do a lot of experimentation to figure things out how to do that. And so what you see in this curve is the cost volume dependent is weak when setup, queue time, and transportation time is greatly reduced. And so these gentlemen were figuring out, well, we don't have to take setup time, queue time, and transportation time as fixed. We can reduce those, and then we'll achieve a different result, and we can be competitive with the large-scale producers who are relying on economies of scale. So this is very important. Again, you have to be brave to try things out in order to reduce setup time, queue time, and part transport. The other thing is Kaizen and flow in particular gets you on customers' time. The clock that we're all used to looking at is on the left-hand side. This is how our customers think. They're anxious to receive their orders and so forth. But in batch and queue processing, things happen extremely slowly. The clock scale is more on the order of months and weeks, and it takes a long time to do anything. And usually there's some singular expert saying this is the way to do it. There's only one answer, do it my way. Whereas when you're constantly experimenting and so forth, you're getting closer to, you're eliminating the queues, you're connecting processes, you're getting much closer to your customer's time. And that puts you at an advantage compared to others who take longer to satisfy customer demand. So again, more why Kaizen, employee physical and mental health. Batch and queue processing creates a chronic, chaotic, high stress environment for all employees. And I've worked in these kind of environments. You have too, you know it. Maybe you work in that now and you're trying to get away from it. But you have situations or characteristics like this if the expectations are unknown. Remember years ago, I asked one of my bosses what's expected of me. And his answer was, how should I know? I don't know what's expected of me. So this creates a horrible environment for people to work in, micromanaging, the teamwork that's dysfunctional, the meetings that you attend that go on for a long time, yet there is no result that comes out of it. You have these status differences in organizations that create problems. You do as you're told environment. The results focus that basically says, I don't care about processes. I don't care how you do it, just get it done. And blaming people for problem and so forth. So you have this constant feeling of not being in control. And that activates a stress response in people, the fight or flight response. And that's not a good thing to happen if it's occurring in a chronic way. In an acute way, which means once in a while, sure, we have to respond to some emergency and so on. But when we have a work environment that has these kinds of characteristics and people feel high stress chronically, then that creates a big problem in terms of employee physical and mental health. And what I'm showing you here is just 4 examples. There is more to it than just this. But a chronic stress environment results in bad health through high levels of glucocorticoid and adrenaline for prolonged periods of time. That's bad. It's good when you're in an emergency situation because it has you react quickly, such as if you see some kind of a threat in the natural environment, a snake or something like that, it shuts down your other systems briefly and you know how to run away quickly. But when you have this occurring over long periods of time, such as we're in the workplace for 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, that's bad. You have a hardening of the arteries as a simple way of understanding atherosclerosis, the collection of fat in abdominal areas, subcutaneous fat between organs, and then you also have chromosome damage. So these tips at the end of the chromosome are called telomeres, and they unravel ahead of schedule, indicating more rapid aging as a result of chronic stress. So employee health is something that managers should be concerned about, but often they don't have much concern about it. And one of the things that I'd written about years ago was if lean is understood and practiced correctly, it is a system for improving human health. And that, of course, is very important in terms of the company and its resources and being available to do work and so on, as well as, depending on your country you're in, who pays for healthcare for people in society, whether it's the company or the state. So what we have is, of course, good people trapped in bad processes, unfortunately, for decades. And these bad processes, of course, cause all sorts of problems in the organization. They frustrate people, the blame. You have all kinds of abnormal conditions that are created. It's bad for the business. It threatens the survival of the business. The problem is, of course, this stuff happens very slowly. And so it's hard to notice the decline in human health as a result of a chronically high stress environment. And people get very used to the environment that they're living in. They don't see how it's threatening survival in a tangible, dramatic way until perhaps there's a shock like COVID-19, which just exposed the long-standing problems that existed in the organization. So for Kaizen to function properly, and it has to possess 6 characteristics. It must be non-blaming and non-judgmental, otherwise people won't experiment. It must humanize the workplace. It must never speed up or burn out workers. It must expand employees' knowledge and creativity. It must never result in harm to people. And you want people to spend ideas, not money, when they're doing Kaizen, to tap into human ingenuity and creativity. Now, the inverse of those 6 items is the 6 complaints that employees have had about continuous improvement since the days of Frederick Taylor in the early 1900s. The employees feared being blamed. They feared being turned into a robot and sped up and burnt out. They feared having their knowledge taken away from them. They feared job loss, etc. So, again, for 100 years, the inverse of these things have been around and they continue today. So for Kaizen to succeed, it must possess those 6 positive characteristics listed here. And also, leaders of organizations must think about Kaizen as a human resource development method for developing future leaders. Too often you see in companies that the people who do Kaizen well, people who understand it well, people who learn a lot, people who learn not just the technical but the human aspects as well, they're passed over for promotion in preference for the people who who better conform with the status quo in the organization. So why does Kaizen improve physical and mental health in employees? It puts workers in control of their work, so there's less chaos and there's lower stress. They're able to experiment, to eliminate the problems, to improve the flow of the work. The employees see problems as something good, a challenge, something that stimulates them to a deeper thinking, stimulates them to innovate, create. There's satisfaction in learning. There is better and faster improvement in processes. The thing that frustrates employees so much is in a typical organization that's classically managed, they have an idea for improvement, and the bosses say, forget about it, just do what I tell you, and so forth. And years pass by, and then finally they can try it. And then they say, I've been saying this for years, but we could never do it. So they like to see the faster improvement in decision making. The company, the department they're working is keeping up with the times, whatever the demands of the marketplace customers happens to be. People like to experiment and try new things. You see it in their hobbies and food and life outside of work, travel, all kinds of things that people do to that engage their interests, read different books in different genres or different authors. They like to experiment and try new things. And the result of that, of course, is all the things that you would hope to get and that business strives to achieve, was this: your costs go down, your profits go up, your quality improve, and so on. However, we always have this on the left-hand side, what I call the dooming cycle, the business as usual mindset, which is to ignore the truth. And the truth is that there is a gap between the plan, whatever it happens to be, and actual. And this plan could be something at a high level, corporate level, or it can be at the working level. We had a plan to accomplish such and such today, that didn't happen. Or it could be your individual plan. You come to work and say, well, today I hope to get these 5 things done. But at the end of the day, I only got one of those things done. So you can either say one of 2 things is, oh, well, I didn't get those 4 things done. Who cares? They're paying me anyway. I'll try again tomorrow. And if I don't get those things done, who cares? I'll try again later. So you basically ignore the causes of why you were unable to get those 4 things done. And then you have this dooming cycle where the problem emerges and you react and you fix it, you band-aid it and forget about it, and then it just recurs over and over. And then, of course, over time, you have an organization that's stagnating, that's chaotic, and an unpleasant place to work, one with chronic high stress. If, on the other hand, you say, I came to work to do these 5 things today, but I only got 1 done, why was that? Well, then you think about that and you come up with a plan, meaning some ideas to try out and figure out if they had the effect you expected. If not, make an adjustment. And if you do this day in, day out as part of your normal work routine, over time you develop improvement and stability in your own personal work as well as that of your department and writ large for the company. And so the business as usual mindset, unfortunately, just accepts the status quo, the way things are and so forth. And then when some emergency comes, everybody pulls together in the same direction. But otherwise, it's just confusing, chaotic environment. The Kaizen mindset is out there to seek the truth, to understand what is really going on from a standpoint of curiosity, and also from a standpoint of, why should we waste our time and our lives on these recurring problems? It's no fun. We get no satisfaction out of it. We get paid, sure, that's okay, but we don't like the work we're doing and we're unhappy. And so you have to reject the status quo and develop an inquisitiveness, a curiosity to want to understand what's going on. And that ends up being something that's not easy to do, especially if the management doesn't support that way of thinking. And in particular, if management doesn't do that themselves. So the Kaizen mindset, this is one of the things we're taught from Sensei Nakamatsu Sign. He says, we are always at our worst. You may think you are a good company today, but make no mistake, you are not. You may become better tomorrow, but still you are toward the back. At any moment, somewhere in this world, there is someone doing the same work better. There is no end. You must continually seek to improve. So this is the mentality of somebody that is focused on how do we ensure that this business survives. Some people look at this, those words and are offended by it. But I'm not offended by the words and words similar to these that I've heard from other sensei. I find these words inspirational because they're true, and it connects with the words earlier of Oswald Nauth, who said, you know, businesses are constantly deteriorating. Every organization constantly deteriorates. You must initiate a flow of experiments. So they're saying the same thing in different ways, but many people just don't quite comprehend it, or they don't want to believe it. You know, if we believe in our own greatness, then we don't we don't recognize this sort of thing. We don't continually seek to improve. So the leaders, they're a part of the process for Kaizen to function effectively in the organization. They should, of course, be engaged in Kaizen personally in the different ways in which Kaizen is deployed in an organization, individually and team-based. But one of the things leaders need to do is explicitly direct teams towards experimentation and innovation. And it has to be in a no-blame environment. The employees' Kaizen efforts must be respected. The leaders must show interest and enthusiasm for Kaizen results. So a quick example, if a Kaizen team is showing the results of their Kaizen efforts and the leader's cell phone goes off and they answer it, well, that's no good. You're not showing interest. You're not respecting the employees. You cannot do that. You have to have the discipline to focus and show your interest and attention in Kaizen results. Small results are good. A failed Kaizen, that's a good result as well, because that's an experiment that didn't work, so the team will go forward and try something new. Don't second guess the Kaizen team members, and you must thank and reward employees for their Kaizen efforts. I mean, it's a common courtesy. You should support employees with positive messages and do not do the negative messages, and that includes a negative body language too that would signal disinterest or displeasure. So I want to explain in the next 3 slides an aspect of Kaizen that is very poorly understood, and I hope that this connects strongly with you and that it gives you an aha moment. But the typical way an organization is run is through a numbers focus. The numbers related to labor and energy and material and space and machines and money, and those numbers vary up or down. And this is centralized improvement, where somebody at the top of the organization is basically saying there's one answer here to generating whatever the profit goal or the cash flow goal or the market share goal happens to be. And so the management method to consume less dollars and resources just by throttling these numbers. Now the Toyota way of doing that, and it's not that Toyota, of course, ignores those numbers, they pay attention to that too. But one of the things that Toyota management is really interested in is decentralized improvement. And so they're interested in the people focus they're interested in people to focus on time and improvement, meaning creativity and ideas. Time is limited, goes in one direction, of course. And so if you can eliminate queue time in a process, you can be more productive in your work. If you can eliminate or reduce rather some of the cycle time, you can be more productive in your process. So you're looking to eliminate queue time, to reduce cycle time and so forth in process improvement. And you're also wanting people to use their ideas and creativity for improvement, which is unlimited. So basically the worker method for consuming less dollars and resources is by focusing on time and the ideas related to improving flow. And so what you have here, what Kaizen teaches people about resources is lessons that you can never get by having a numbers focus. You will never learn what Kaizen teaches about resources through simply a numbers focus. The people focus, here you're creating, you're improving processes to create more time. You're developing people by allowing them to think and experiment. And by doing that, you improve the utilization of the base resources in the company, as well as time and creativity as resources within the company. So it's absolutely amazing what Toyota style Kaizen teaches about resources, teaches about the development of people and so on. And this is not something that people understand well, and this is one of the really unfortunate aspects about how Lean has been deployed over the years. To me, Kaizen means, learning, innovation, ideas, teamwork, What you see on the picture in the left here is a washing machine. And the sensei challenged the team to eliminate a large washing machine that would wash the oil off of stamped parts in a process that made little airfoils for a ground-based turbine engine. So little airfoils that would fit in the palm of your hand. And the washing machine cost $10,000 or so and would hold 500 or 600 pieces. And you'd run the washing machine, when it was full with 500 or 600 pieces. So it was a bottleneck. The stamping process was pretty quick, and the heat treating process, which is why the parts have to be cleaned to remove the oil, that was a continuous flow process, but the washing machine was a bottleneck. So Sensei challenged the team to build a small one-piece flow washing machine to clean the parts. And so what you see here are 3 ultrasonic tanks, and there's some gears, and it's connected to some electricity and some hooks up here. And it basically, you load a part on and it washes the part as it goes through the 3 paths. Now, think about this. Kaizen is not just having people figure out, the sort of the electrical and the mechanical aspects of this thing. They are producing a piece of equipment here that's not capital equipment. It is expensed. So they now can get rid of the $10,000 washing machine, sell it to somebody who might be interested in that, and instead they're just using stuff that you buy from an industrial catalog supply store. And this basically, you don't have to pay taxes on that washing machine, the $10,000 washing machine. So the sensei gave people an interesting challenge. They applied human intelligence and teamwork, and they came up with a low-cost innovation. This device, and this was produced in the space of a week or so. It's been refined multiple times since then, and it's just a thing of beauty to see what these people came up with. And there's many more stories like this. We're together here for a short period of time, but the innovation and the cost reduction, the reduction of cost, the reduction of the cost base of the business that results from this when it's done on a broader scale is just remarkable. So how do you learn about Toyota Kaizen? Well, there's some stuff you can read in a book, but ultimately you got to get your hands dirty. The reason why I and my colleagues wrote these 2 books was to inform people about aspects of Toyota style Kaizen that had not been written about before. And this book, Better Thinking, Better Results, tells the story of the wire mold company and how Kaizen produces business results. This is another thing I tell people. The thing you should be most afraid of is a competitor who is committed to rapid trial and error throughout the hierarchy, because the companies that can do that well are just going to take your business away. So those are a couple of resources if you're interested. As I said, I've done a lot of writing, and I just want to call your attention to these 3 books here. One of the things I've been working on for 13 years is unraveling the mystery of why most executives resist or reject lean management. And there's been enormous progress to understanding that. So if you have been like me and many others who've tried to advance lean management in an organization but have met with resistance, these books dig down into the deep details of why that is occurring. And one of the things, the effects that these books are having is it's having people rethink their approach to how they engage their leadership team to try to get them to abandon classical management and adopt lean management. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, I hope you will have a look at that. I'd just like to finish up here with a challenge, or hopefully you will take the advice to make things better, because better is good, better is fun, and better is healthy. But it's only through Kaizen by everyone every day that can help make that happen. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and love to take your questions.
Okay, hope you can hear me, everyone. So thank you very much, Bob. I certainly found that quite fascinating. And looking at the audience, you have certainly a lot of good thinkers in the audience. You've probably got about half of the European winners of Shingo Prize books in the audience, as well as many people like Paddy and Gil and Christine, who are some of the deeper thinkers on Lean and Kaizen, etc. So what we'd like you to do is, if you look for the question box, you'll see you can type in a question. I'll read them out because it's probably hard to be answering and looking at the same time, Bob. So the first one we got is from Tony, who says, true that a company can always improve. How do you best influence and convince a company to improve?
By a company, well, if it's a company and that means the leadership of the company, I'll refer you back to those 3 books because they get into the comprehensive description of what's causing the problem. But with followers in the organization, well, then of course one has to lead in a certain way and people will follow. And so people, if you emphasize these kinds of things that are important, if you participate in these kinds of things, then people will see it's for real. And if you don't, they won't.
Right. Okay.
I mean,
very good.
there's just too much of leaders saying we need to do Lean, we need to do Kaizen, and we means somebody else, not me. So that doesn't work.
Yeah. So I mean, I always talk about people in, leaders are fully behind Lean, about 10 miles fully behind Lean, rather than they're actually there at the Gemba and making it happen themselves and working with people and teaching and creating learning opportunities. So another question here, why do in so many cases do we default to batch and queue processing? Why don't we default to flow? Why is flow counterintuitive?
Yeah, well, batch and queue, because batch and queue is easier for the company. It's worse for suppliers, it's worse for customers especially, but it's basically easiest for the producer to go do. But the other thing of importance here is classical management is within that world of classical management, you find batch and queue processing. And classical management it preserves certain rights and privileges to leaders that fall away with flow. And I describe that in those books. And it's a point that not many people recognize, that batch and queue production as part of classical management ensures that leaders maintain certain rights and privileges.
Right, okay. There's a hi, Bob, from Jamil. I don't think there was a question. So if you got a question, Jamil, just come back with that one. So there's a question here from Jamie. Do you have advice for driving Kaizen while being remote and not physically in the plant?
Yeah, I would just sort of break it down. If you got ideas, try them out. Whether you're in the plant or not, try them out. I mean, if your idea impinges or has a potential impact on somebody upstream or downstream from you, well, get on Zoom and talk to somebody about it. But basically, you have an idea, try it out. Idea, try it out. There's too much of just I'm doing my work as I'm told. I got no ideas. I just do these things. Well, of course you have ideas. Everybody's got ideas. And sometimes, they come to you, write them down, because oftentimes people will just, the phone will ring and then they'll get sidetracked and they'll forget about their idea. If you got an idea, try it out. If you can't try it out immediately, write it down. Try it out when you get the nearest opportunity to do that. And a lot of that can happen independently when people are not co-located.
I guess, add to that, Jamie, I mean, my own thoughts on that one is maybe your role, I don't know if you're a lean coach on a sort of regional global basis or something, is maybe it's working with the senior folk in the plants to ask exactly the sort of things that Bob's been talking about, get people to encourage people to do that. What would you do? I mean, I find so often you get this sort of over escalation of problems, partly because of fear and so forth. And I try and work with senior guys and say, well, say to them, well, what would you do if it was up to you? and then almost whatever they say, well, I'll back you, go and have a go at that. And if it doesn't work, I'll still back you because at least you're having a go. Anyway,
Right.
so
Yeah, or something like you know, a leader talking to people and to a small, a team of people or in a cell or something, say, I know you're frustrated with this process, or you can't be happy with it, or just go ahead and improve it. They have to have that freedom to go do that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, we got a question from Christine Stewart, who I assume is the same Christine I worked with for many years when we studied the Lean program at Cardiff University. So Christine and I had some issues with trying to do this in the university, and you can appreciate that, Bob. And we came to the conclusion that most of the issues are around the leadership and behavior, not actually about the tools and processes. So anyway, Christine says, I was asked just today, was there a lean leadership model? I'm sure you're going to say I've written a book on this, Bob.
Unfortunately, I have. I apologize. Yeah, I mean, there's many models, but the reality that we're facing is, to the best of anybody's estimation, something like 90%, 95%, 98% of businesses continue to be under the realm of classical management. And the lean transformations are few in number. So, correct me if you think I'm off base, but I don't know, what is it? 2%, 5%, 1%, 0.1%, I don't know, it's not big numbers. And so this says that the leadership models that have proliferated over the last 30 years, and really more like over the last 15 or so, maybe 20, are mostly, not getting the job done. And if you think more generally about leadership and organizational development and organizational behavior and the models that come out of the HR world, those have been largely ineffective as well. So it's not just the lean world leadership models that are mostly ineffective. It is also the 75 years worth, 100 years worth of leadership and HR type of models. So they're obviously not getting at the root cause of the problem. So, you see in this slide, I've written a lot of books. Great. If I'm going to recommend to you just a couple, is Kaizen Forever, because that connects the people, the business, the processes, humanity, that just connects it all. And then if you want to know why, these leadership models and stuff don't work, it's these three books: The Triumph of Classical Management, Irrational Institutions, Management Mysterium. And if you're fed up with lean altogether, just go to Speed Leadership. But I wouldn't. You have to dig much deeper, and believe me, it's taken me more than a decade to unravel what the hell is going on here. And it's an unpleasant story. You're not going to like it, but you're going to say, yeah, that's what's going on. That's what I've experienced. That's what I've seen.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to keep going because there's quite a lot of questions coming in.
Okay.
So the next one is from Lars. And he's asking about, well, what he frequently hears is people, we don't have time for this. We don't have time for experimentation. How do you break that sort of vicious circle and, actually get people to have time to be able to start doing this?
Well, so that's an excuse, of course. That's sort of a surface level pushback. There's something deeper going on that's deeper than that. And so you have to peel back the onion and figure out what it is. And it probably has something to do with, blame and ideas that we've had in the past. We were penalized for doing things and so on. So be part of the Kaizen team that makes the time to make the improvement. And part of the idea here is, remember I showed you, the differentiator with Toyota style Kaizen is rapid improvement. You're improving quickly, put that clock face on there of it's not, in too many companies, Kaizen is thought of as a project. And of course, who needs another project to work on? Nobody. It takes time. You got to organize, and it's a mess. So no, don't do that. Just got ideas, try it out.
I mean, I always think on this one that, one of the issues is fundamentally how we think of an organization of, managers manage by tell people what to do, and leaders sit there and orchestrate and think of big projects that probably no one wants to do either. and we don't listen to the frontline people, and we don't organize. You know, for instance, the first thing that we did, I don't know, in the 60s or 70s and 80s is we got rid of frontline leading hands, which are the sort of vital bit in the Toyota system to actually be doing the improvement and covering for operators to do the improvement. So we fundamentally shot ourselves in the foot by getting rid of the resource so that we did have the time, because we saw these as waste, but it was foolish, you know, foolish thing.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, anyway, so one from Robert. How do we address the general erosion of lean capability in both our practitioners and leaders? Some of the so-called great companies are no longer training and developing internal CI lean people.
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
Yeah, how do we address the general erosion of lean capability in both practitioners and leaders?
Yeah. Okay. So in the early days, lean was more of a technical orientation and understanding what that was. And then later on, it was, integration with the human aspects and so forth. But what's happened over time is the sort of an erosion of the technical capabilities. I mean, I go to companies, you see, A3 reports and this and that and visuals, whatever, but you hardly ever see flow or just in time or whatever. Instead, lean has become more like a social phenomenon rather than the integration of the technical and the social. So I've witnessed a sort of an erosion of the technical skills related to lean. Peter, how about you?
I don't know. I mean, there's some organizations that, that were very well known for doing improvement. GE might be a classic example. And, once Jack Welch went with that leadership, and okay, I don't agree with all the aspects of he did, but there were some good aspects to that. And once that leadership push and drive went, I think, maybe in companies it slipped away. So I don't know, Robert, I think that might be one for a PhD for you to get on and have a look at and help us out on that one.
Well, Robert, you may be, if you go to my website, there's a blog post called The Transformation of Lean. And I wrote a short paper about, it's called The Transformation of Lean, a social theory of the lean movement. And you just click on the abstract, the image of the abstract of the paper, and you'll get the PDF file, and maybe that's useful to you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Waleed, you've got quite a detailed long question. I'm going to try and synthesize it a little bit. So the point he's making is that you talked a lot about health and well-being, mental health, physical health, and so forth in organizations. Is there some sort of way we can measure this?
Well, I suppose there can be. There's healthcare expenses. I don't, in the U.S., a company is responsible for employees' healthcare if they're employed, and if not, the government is. So there is all kinds of tracking metrics and so forth for that sort of thing.
I guess so.
But on the other hand, I think it's important that one of the things our senseis taught us was if you spend your time trying to measure everything, you will not spend time on improvement. Yes, you need some metrics and so forth, and hopefully they're the right ones in terms of giving you the correct insights that then produce the appropriate actions. But I mean, you can go around a company and see if people are smiling, unhappy, and enjoying their work, and then you can also go around and see if they're dull and depressed and unhappy. You don't need a metric for this stuff, for some of this stuff.
I mean, maybe the ultimate metric of this is things like absenteeism, because if you haven't got a happy and physically well workforce, they're either going to feel like they need time off or really need time off and so forth. But then maybe you need.
Go on. Sorry, Peter.
Maybe you need some lead measures. Like how much coaching do you do around mental health or things like that are trying to prevent this.
Correct. And there's things like smoking and obesity, and these can be responses to stress in an organization. It could be family life too, But if I'm unhappy at work, I'm going to drag some of that into home, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a connection between the two.
Yeah. Okay, so I think this must be your friend Jamil here, who's asking a question of the day. So how do you eliminate bottlenecks in hospitals nowadays, especially in ICU? I think if we knew the answer to that, we'd all be a lot better off.
Yeah. Now how do you eliminate bottlenecks? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. There's many questions I don't know the answer to.
Maybe Jamil, you want to go back to our first webinar where we had Mark talking about lean in the sort of healthcare environment. So there might be a few clues in that one if you look at the video on that one. Okay, I'm going to move on. So we got
ideas. Let's, people have ideas. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, we're doing well on the questions. We've done about half of them, so I'm going to keep rolling.
Okay.
Lean is a buzzword in every management forum, but why do most companies fail to implement lean culture? Also, how should we develop this thinking that quality of improvement doesn't depend on cost? This is Deepak asking this one.
I just, let me return back to those books, and let me explain something, because I'm not doing this to make money, and I think not enough people understand that about me. I'm a professor sharing information. This is this book, can you see it on the screen, everybody? Peter, is the screen still live recording?
Yeah, you've got the book. Yeah,
that's a $20 book. These two are $10 books. This one's a 300 page. That's each of the other two are 100 page. They get into describing in detail the problem that you want answers to. And I can do a different webinar on this topic some other time. But really, those contain, you will be amazed at how much this answers your questions.
Right, very good, very good. Okay, so we have a question from my friend Gil, actually, who used to do a lot of wine bottling, and he's now doing some other teaching stuff.
Very good.
So, so Bob loved the improvised washing machine. So he asked, so one of the barriers that he sees in implementing this type of thing is the engineering competence, or actually maybe confidence. So how do you sort of overcome that? How do you overcome those sort of barriers? We can't do this, or I'm not confident to do this.
Give them the challenge, and let's see your results in 5 hours, not 5 weeks. They have to. When you give people a challenge like that, they have to drop some of their preconceptions. If you say, I want you to build something in the next 6 hours to accomplish this, I don't expect perfection and so forth, but I want you to assemble the pieces and get it roughly in operation in the next 5 hours. People have to abandon a bunch of preconceptions, which is normally the way I do this is I'd go through an industrial supply catalog, or I'd call one of our established suppliers and put out an RFQ and get a quote for this thing, and then we compete it against 3 other suppliers, and it just forces them into a different world, and that's how you do it.
Sure. Okay, we got another question here from Paddy, who's just moved on to a new role, but he was the CI guy in one of the best people-orientated, learning-orientated businesses that I've seen. So Paddy's question is, Kaizen creates a lot of positive interest from employees in the organization. There's generally great energy in the room. How do you create this same energy and engagement with A3 problem solving, which is essentially achieving the same objective of making things better, albeit at a smaller scale?
Yeah, I don't see them as achieving the same objective at all. And A3, who's doing the A3? That's for management. A3 is not for workers. So I'm not sure if the question relates to A3 or workers, managers or workers doing A3.
In Paddy's old organization, they got everyone in the organization doing A3s.
Okay, and I don't know why.
Sounds like,
it's a
Penny,
management tool.
you need to maybe contact Bob separately and have that conversation with him. Perhaps we could do
Sorry.
that. Okay, we got a few more here. Where we got to? So Manivel says, very nice. Many companies, Kaizen is a ritual, big thing in leadership, requiring to motivate employees. I love the slide where you brought how the leadership style can run alongside health for the long run. Are these books available online? Would you be able to share them? It sounds like a put up job, Bob. You sent this question in yourself,
it's
did you?
not. Actually, it's not. That's not my thing to do something like that. They're print and ebook versions of all of those books available on Amazon.
Okay, so maybe the best place is just type in Bob Emiliani. Do you still use ML or just Bob?
I use Bob Emiliani.
Okay, Bob Emiliani.
If you see academic papers with written by M. L. Emiliani, that's me as well.
Yeah, I was confused for about 5 years. There were two Emilianis writing this stuff that looked similar to each other.
I wish you would have contacted me sooner.
Okay.
But yeah, you should have no trouble getting those. Okay, so
okay,
yeah, and anybody can contact me later. You know, my email is bob@bobemiliani.com. If you want to set up a time to talk separately, that's fine.
Yeah,
happy to do so.
very good. Okay, good. So question point from Joy here. Given the leading lean challenges you've outlined here, what ideas for improvement would you have for those working in leadership development with boards and senior leaders? What might help switch on their mindset to this?
You're gonna get mad at me. Triumph of classical management, irrational institutions, and management mysterium will help you understand the mindset, what I call the institution of leadership, and how classical management, that sort of deep rooted thinking behind that. And if you understand that, then you will develop some ideas for how to interact with those people. I do not have, it's a very nettlesome problem. So
Right.
in the first book, I propose a couple of solutions, but basically my purpose in writing those books was to tell people, here is the lay of the land, which we never understood before, but now we do. Here it is. Given now that you understand the lay of the land, what would you do? And so it's put out there for everybody to try to figure out what is the, you know, the thing you would do now that you have this new information of what boards and how top leaders think. There isn't a prescriptive solution to that. There may be, I haven't thought of it. Maybe others will.
Yeah. The good thing about Bob is he often doesn't give you the answers, but he gets you to try and think of them yourself. So,
well, I would just add that what you see today in leadership and what you see today in management, so the institution of leadership and classical management, this goes back, its development has occurred over hundreds of years, if not thousands of years in time. So you're not seeing a phenomenon today that's new. It is something that has existed and been built upon for centuries. And something that has those qualities and characteristics is difficult to displace. And we've experienced that directly because the business case for lean is open and shut, right?
mm-hmm.
I mean, if business was all about money, you'd say, well, look at Toyota's cumulative net income compared to its competitors, and they're 5 times higher in cumulative net income over the last 5 years. And so if business is all about money, of course everybody would just flock to lean management, but they don't. Why is that? Well, tell me what, business is not all about money. That's where you have to understand the institution of leadership. That's why it's so important. So what's happened over the decades is people started out on this lean effort thinking they understood leaders and leadership. They didn't. And also thinking they understood business. And they actually really, surprisingly, did not really understand that as well. I think you'll find those books extraordinarily illuminating. And the reason why there's no simple answer is it goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Okay, very good. We've got more questions than probably time, so I think we'll just take 3 more and we'll compromise between time and questions. So I've got one here from Daryl, a good Welsh guy who seems to speak Norwegian better than he speaks Welsh anymore. So Daryl Powell, you might know him. So he says, hi Bob, hi Peter. What would your advice be for new frontline leaders to successfully engage her team in Kaizen improvement without compromising the operations and delivery?
Well, first of all, Daryl, congratulations on learning Norwegian. That's an accomplishment. I think you have to do a lot of one-on-one. I mean, when I was a business unit manager, I faced resistance from people on the shop floor. I had a 3-shift operation, and you have to meet with people one-on-one. You have to have a good rapport, develop a good rapport, have good conversations with them about what's really troubling them, about whatever the improvement activity happens to be. And these people, I was a new manager. These people had been around a long time. They've had 5, 10, 20, 30 managers prior to me. And they've been burned by those managers in the past who promised this but did not deliver, said they would do something but didn't do it, and so on. And any new leader carries the burden of all the past leaders, whether you're a frontline supervisor, all the way up the chain of command. And so there's a certain skepticism that's built into any organization when it comes to change and improvement, and it's understandable. And I think you have to be honest with people and say, yeah, I understand why you don't, why you're skeptical about this, but let's try it out and see.
Sure. Okay, we got a question here from Nitin, who says, hello, how do you motivate people for doing Kaizen? What's stopping people participate? Is there sort of reward mechanisms, even if reward mechanisms don't work? So is there a magic bullet for this?
Yeah, I mean, what I've experienced with Toyota style Kaizen is people are given a challenge, and it's in a compressed time frame, and so they have to think so-called out of the box, to use a cliche, and they're amazed with what they come up with, and there's great reward and satisfaction in having produced a better way of doing something. I remember a recent Kaizen where within a couple of days, people figured out how to create a flow line for producing a product that was always late, always behind schedule, always had quality problems and so forth. And it took them a day and a half to reorganize the work and mistake proof it and so on. And it was just, it literally brought tears to my eyes seeing what this Kaizen team had done. And they were so proud of what they had accomplished. They made the work so much simpler, safer. They were never behind in delivery anymore. Excuse me, they were not behind in delivery anymore. And so there was tremendous satisfaction that usually there's satisfaction in doing the job, but also the management says, good job, that's amazing, teach other people what you've done here, continue to improve and so on. And then there's some token rewards of, Kaizen shirts or something that people, that are good, good quality Kaizen shirts that people value, that have a company logo, Kaizen team written on it, and so on. So it's not any kind of financial incentive explicitly for participating in Kaizen. But by the way, where you do see Kaizen work well is where companies do have profit sharing. So you get a paycheck, that's your near-term reward. There's some savings plan, which is a long-term reward, and then quarterly profit sharing. In those kind of companies that have that midterm reward of quarterly profit sharing, so people can see the result of Kaizen in different ways, including the money, then that tends to work very well. But most leaders will not institute profit sharing because they think it comes out of the shareholder's pocket, but you're so much more productive and take market share, you grow your business, that's good for shareholders, so whatever you spent in profit sharing is not a problem.
Okay, thank you. So the last question, I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. I think we've got most people's questions. There's a few sort of second questions coming around from people, but we'll take this one as the last one from Antoine, who says, can Kaizen use Six Sigma processes? Can you join them together? And, we sort of maybe assume Kaizen equals lean stuff. how does that all, how do we square the circle on that one?
One of the remarkable things about Toyota's, the methods embedded within the larger Kaizen method is to use tools and practices, tools and methods that anybody can use. So the reason why you don't see Six Sigma in Toyota is because that requires the specialist's capability. You know, in a classroom, if I go to my students, there's 20 students, how many of you understand statistics? One person will raise their hand. So what Toyota has done is the methods and tools that are used to improve are something that's accessible to anybody. And Six Sigmas and things like that are not looked at as being useful for improvement, because now you have to rely on specialists. When you rely on specialists, now you create bottlenecks, and improvement doesn't happen because there's a bottleneck. Remember, we need to improve quickly. We need to improve every day. Rapid testing, trial and error of ideas. And so Six Sigma is something different that does not fit within that framework. And don't forget, think about how Toyota, who was a nobody after World War II and then nobody into the 1950s, by the 1970s, they're exporting automobiles all over the world. So how do you get so much better, so much faster? You know, going from 1955 to 1975, the oil embargo and all that. How do you do that? Well, that's through everybody, all levels of the organization, rapidly improving processes every day.
Great. Well, I think time is probably against us there, Bob. So I certainly, for one, have enjoyed the session, and I always find the things you say make me think a little bit, and I think there was some really valuable information in there. So Emma, are you going to just close us down for the session?
And let me just say in the end, thank you very much. Happy to participate. If you have questions, you can email me, or we can set up a time to have a Zoom conversation.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much, Bob, for a brilliant webinar. And thank you for those participating as well and for all your questions. I've just put up a quick poll if you are able to select for the rating of this webinar. That's great to get some feedback. We will also, if you would like to know more about the Enterprise Excellence Network and also to view the other upcoming webinars, you can visit our website, which is enterpriseexcellencenetwork.com, which will also be sent in a follow-up email. And that's it from us. So thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. And if you want to fill in the rating of the webinar, that would be great. So thanks again, and look forward to seeing you again for the next session. Goodbye all.